Welcome to the Easier Way to Sell presentation of Close the Deal Without Selling. Here's your host and developer of the Easier Way to Sell, Ike Krieger.
Hey, this is Ike Krieger. Welcome back. I like to think of myself as a guide on your journey to discover new and different ways to accomplish things that you might have been wanting to discover your whole life. And, that's a pretty bold thing for a guide to say, but after 30 years plus of sharing this information, it's pretty clear it has had an impact. Now, you've had the opportunity to listen to conversations with some of my earliest students, and you've heard them say how big a deal this system was in their business and in their personal life. And with that in mind, in this episode, I have 2 gems for you. One of those gems is my favorite tip of all. And once you feel comfortable using this tip, your sales life will never be the same. The second gem, well, as I mentioned in a prior episode, I'm always on the lookout for exceptional people with a willingness to share their success with you. Marcus Chan, our guest a bit later in the podcast, is one of those people. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that in our conversation, I sprang something on Marcus for which he wasn't prepared, and as would be expected, he came back with a marvelous response anyway. I asked him the question, what problem do you solve? It's a simple question with a not-so-simple answer, and you're about to find out how to answer that question in an immensely powerful way. Here's a tip that'll blow your mind. The next time someone asks you, what do? Don't tell them. Yes, you heard me correctly. You see, most people don't really care what you do. They most certainly don't want to hear or see what you do or how you do it. All they care about is what you can do for them. So, the next time someone asks you, what do? Don't tell them. Now, I realize you just can't stand there and smile at them after they've asked that question, so I guess you want to know what to say instead. First, let's review the 3 foundational definitions of the easier way to sell. First, a problem. A problem exists when there's a difference between what you have and what you say you want. Business. Business is defined as solving other people's problems and getting compensated for it. Isn't that what you do? And closing. Closing is your ability to create a conversational environment in which the prospect comes to the conclusion on their own that your product or service will do what? That's right, solve their problem. Now, of all the tips that I've provided, this is the one that I think is the most important. With the understanding and clarity that this tip provides, you end up differentiating yourself from your competition and positioning yourself as one in a million rather than one of the millions. I think it's a simple tip, yet over the years, many of my clients found that it took a lot of work to discover their personal secret answer to the question, so, what do? Imagine being able to tell someone what you do in a way that has them say, "Ah, I can use that," or "I know someone who needs your help." Here comes the broken record part. It's all in your language. How you communicate determines your effectiveness in business and in life, and this tip is based on the language you use to answer the following question. What problem do you solve? Now, the answer I get most often to that question is usually somebody telling me what they do rather than the problem they solve. Let's go over this example. Jim is a CPA. I ask Jim what problem he solves for his clients, and he responds, I help individuals and companies prepare their taxes and maintain their financial records. That might be what Jim does, but that's not the problem he solves. I asked again, and Jim looked at me with a blank stare and repeated his last answer. This is the point where my wife Jenny says I could be clearer in my explanation, so her suggestion was that I shift the way I ask the question. So, what are the negatives of doing taxes and keeping financial records yourself? How about all the changes make it hard to keep up with current tax law? How about it's hard to keep track of when all the documents need to be completed and filed? How about I'm not very good with numbers? Which of these negatives does Jim's business resolve? What negatives do you turn into positives? Ask yourself, what negatives does your target market face that can be solved by your offering? Let me say that again. What negatives does your target market face that can be solved by your offering? Now, remember our definition for the word problem. A problem exists when there's a difference between what you have and what you say you want. And here are a couple of examples of a difference between what you have and what you say you want. A difference between your present state and your desired state. Okay, first, you have an old car that isn't reliable and costs a fortune to keep up. Your desired state, you want a reliable and affordable car. Who's your problem solver? Who's your problem solver? A car salesman, of course. What's a negative in your legal world? Someone files a lawsuit against you. You don't know what to do. You want the legal problem handled. Who's your problem solver? An attorney. You have no financial plan and you're afraid you'll retire broke. You need a financial plan that will help you retire comfortably. Who's your problem solver? A financial planner. You're embarrassed by your small yacht. You want to feel proud of a big yacht. Who's your problem solver? A yacht broker. You're looking for a problem solver because you're looking for a solution. You don't care how they do it, you just want your problem solved. You provide a solution that helps move those in your target market from where they are to where they want to be. You solve their problems and you get compensated. But first, you must be clear on the problem you solve. Let's see how this exercise works for our friend Jim, the CPA. Let's say Jim's target market is made up of owners of small to medium-sized businesses grossing $2 million or less and individuals earning at least $75,000 a year. Now, describe a problem or a negative or a downside that someone in Jim's target market would have in doing their taxes and keeping their records. Why would they seek help from a CPA? There are probably dozens of answers, and if it were you, what might your problem sound like? How about every year I get frustrated because I'm so busy I don't have the time or experience to do my taxes and maintain my records? Or I get frustrated and stressed out when I have to do my own taxes because there's so much new to learn every year. Let's just take the first response. Imagine a prospect comes to Jim and says, I'm frustrated with doing my own taxes and records. I don't have the time or experience to make sure they're right. Jim would probably say, oh, I'll do them for you and make sure they're right. And Jim has a new client. Jim solves the client's problem. The client is relieved. Jim is compensated. However, what if Jim's on an elevator, traveling from the third floor to the first floor, and somebody asks Jim what he does? Here is Jim's standard reply. I help growing businesses file their taxes and maintain their financial records. The response to Jim's answer will probably be, oh, that's nice. However, if Jim used a problem statement, it would change the entire dynamic of the interaction. What if Jim responded to the question like this? You know how frustrating it can be for an owner of a small business to find the time to stay on top of all the changing tax laws? Well, I handle that for my clients so they don't lose sleep thinking about their taxes. You know any business owners that get frustrated and anxious when it's tax time? Or you might want to say, you know how the impact of changing tax and filing requirements can make a business owner crazy? I take on that responsibility for them so they can stop feeling that extra pressure. Let's look at a different industry. Some years back, I consulted for a major Southern California heating and air conditioning company. The HVAC salespeople I worked with told me they would normally answer the question, "What do you do?" this way. We've provided homeowners with efficient heating and cooling systems for nearly 30 years. That's nice. Here's the problem statement alternative. You know how uncomfortable it is when you can't get your home to stay cool enough in the summer or warm enough in the winter without it costing you a fortune? Well, for 3 decades, we've been providing year-round comfort at affordable prices. Could your home use a comfort adjustment? What is your target market frustrated or upset about when it comes to your product or service? In this case, they're frustrated because they can't maintain a comfortable temperature in their home without it costing a fortune. That's the problem the HVAC company solves. The solution revolves around installing efficient heating and cooling systems. Your prospects are frustrated because they know they have a problem and they're searching for a solution. Your problem statement will touch a nerve for someone who's facing that situation, or it won't. And you can then move on to your next recitation of your problem statement. The next question you must answer is, how do you feel when you finally solved a problem? How do most humans feel after they finally solved a problem? They go from frustration or concern to feeling confident and assured. As my friend Dr. Mark Goulston says, these people experience an opportunity to take a deep breath and then emotionally exhale. What do you want your solution to make people feel like? What emotions might your buyer experience when their problem gets solved? How do they want to feel when the problem is solved? They want to feel satisfied, relieved, happy, confident, or even joyful. Plus, at a deeper level, a sense of control is restored. And it's important to keep in mind that when humans have a problem and find themselves searching for a solution, we experience a perceived loss of control. That's why I use descriptive terms when constructing problem statements. This kind of language reinforces the fact that someone needs help getting from where they are to where they want to be. People get frustrated. Now, if you'd like an additional word or two as a substitute for frustrated, there's a list of over 100 of what I call freeway terms on page 327 of the Close the Deal Without Selling Action Guide. Plus, there are exercises to assist you in forming your own problem statement. Now, on that list of freeway terms, the words range from aggravated to annoyed to disgusted. Why do I call them freeway terms? Because these are the emotions you feel when you're stuck on the freeway and you have no control over how long you're going to be there. Begin working on creating your own problem statement. Make it short enough so you can respond in 15 seconds or less to the question, "So, what do you do?" So the next time someone asks you, "What do you do?" respond with the frustration a typical client has and the emotion they experience. You know what these frustrations are, because when a client contacts you, there's usually a complaint and a frustration in their communication. I promise you that a well-formed problem statement will help you with prospecting, with cold calls, with networking. But you must start to think in terms of the problem you solve rather than the solution you provide. Work on your problem statements and perfect them. You'll be blown away by the effect they have. Remember, It's all in your language. If you are familiar with the Billboard Top 100 song list, you know how important it is to have a bullet right next to your song. And I've got some good news. The Close the Deal Without Selling podcast is ready to break into the top 200 business and marketing podcasts on Apple Podcast. And I just want to say that there's a reason for that, and that reason is you. And I want to thank you very much for supporting the podcast. And what I'd really like you to do is go to Apple Podcast. And if you're not already subscribed there, please subscribe and leave a review of the podcast, which will help us move right up that list and get more listeners, which, let's face it, we all want to help in the quest to make the world a safer place for salespeople with the easier way to sell. Thanks again. I'm here with Marcus Chan, and you people are lucky. You're going to hear some good stuff today. And Marcus and I were just about to get into a conversation about his first time getting in contact with me after we became connections on LinkedIn. And lo and behold, in my message section, this video popped up with this man looking almost exactly like the man who you're looking at right now. Yeah, very much so. Good job. And it was, hey, how are you doing? Just happy to make connection. And I was so impressed that when I asked him to please do the podcast, I made sure I did it as a video. So welcome, Marcus. And if we could just start off with that, tell us about the way that you came about this, how it dawned on you that this was really the way that people would like to be communicated to.
Yeah, great. Well, first off, I thank so much for having me on. It's my absolute pleasure. And so I'm the founder of Bentley Consulting Group and creator of Six Figure Sales Academy. And what's really interesting is I came across the LinkedIn video. It was because someone first sent me a video. And it was really interesting. And I remember the name of this exact person. His name is Edward Zia. And he had he connected with me, sent me a video message that was to me. It said my name, just said, hey, what's up? I'm Edward. I think he's out in Australia, New Zealand. And I'm like, wow. And he was just like on a walk somewhere. And that was really impactful for me.
Yeah, I was going to say great impact.
Yeah, because I first of all, I had no idea that you could do that via the LinkedIn app. Right. So because first I went onto the desktop app. I'm looking around. I couldn't figure it out. Looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, it's literally just a plus sign, and there's all these options in there that I had no idea. So I knew, because it had I know a lot about outreach and cold prospecting and all that stuff. I'm like, if I can send a video that they can see immediately that is personalized to them, that's super powerful to create that first connection, that bond, and it's a huge pattern interrupt as well. So I knew that. So then I started testing it, of course, and I started testing it and seeing lots of video messages to really anyone that connected with me, anyone connected with, I'll send a video message immediately, first thing, boom. And
why not?
The responses,
it's so sociable,
right? It was amazing. And this is pre-COVID, right? So people were like, "Whoa, wow!" Like, this is crazy. That was the most common response I got. And what I also found, because it's such a cool feature, right, on LinkedIn, in the app, you can tell pretty quickly, right, if they looked at your message or not, right? And that was really, really neat. And that was cool. And then, of course, usually what would happen was it would put their guard down and open a conversation. And then now the doors are open to have a conversation. So if it led organically to meetings or relationships or whatever, it worked out really nicely by opening it up with a video to really show them I'm a legitimate person. I'm actually the guy in my profile picture, which is very, very powerful.
You look just like that other guy.
Right, exactly. So
I want to put you on the spot here in a second and ask you to do $1 million role play, because I saw you do one on one of your videos where 20 seconds you picked up your phone and said, this is how I do it. But first, would you tell us what you mean by pattern interrupt?
Yeah. So if you think about this, I think many people on LinkedIn have now become numb to the direct message. The most of them, what they get They get the number one, they get the like Forex message, which is first they start off like, hi, how are you? It's this kind of awkward fake conversation, right? And then they get into a pitch about Forex or Bitcoin. Or you get someone that says, hey, I'm so happy to connect with you. What are your biggest goals? Well, I'm like, you're a stranger. Why would I tell you my goals? All right. Or you get the course, the classic, the full-on pitch it's a very, chunky paragraph text, and then a Calendly link, it says, hey, we do this, and this. We are super awesome. Book a time on my calendar. And of course, none of those approaches really work at all. So I'm sure they have probably a very small percentage. That's probably why they keep doing it. But I'm sure they.
But part of the stress
98%.
in this thing we call sales is brought about by this necessity to perform and get these, whether they're by mail or whether they're in person, and be perfect. And it was very interesting. I had an acting teacher on the podcast not long ago, and we were talking about stage fright as it related to confidence in sales and butterflies. And she said, stop making it about you. Start making it about the other person and watch how it goes away. So
100%.
This pattern interrupt of saying, hey, what you're used to, this is different. I just want to acknowledge you so much.
That's right. So that pattern interrupt is that video first off. They're like, whoa, that's already different, right? And then, second, just even what you say in the video is also different as well. Because even what I say in the video is different than all those past examples already outlined. Right? Yeah. There's no hard pitch. There's no real any pitch at all. It's purely about value for the other person, right? If it's not my target market, if I'm doing a video anyways, right, then it's going to be just, hey, what's up, video? Thanks so much. Super friendly. And that's a great way to just open a conversation regardless. And that could be, that can lead to other things like, I did it to you with no expectation, no intention.
Got it.
And now we're talking and we're going to build a relationship and a friendship from here, which I'm very excited about, right?
I found it very powerful. Very powerful. And I invite people to give some thought to it. But now, if I can have a drum roll, please, show them how simple it is and how easy it is when you're willing to be authentic with somebody. And if there's one thing that I can accuse you of, it's authenticity. So if you wouldn't mind, please demonstrate a quick video call.
Yeah, cool. So I'll show you real quick, and then I'll kind of break down the structure as well.
Excellent.
So this way people can understand, how can I replicate this for what I do?
Perfect.
Right? So for me, they accept on request or whatever. I grab my phone, boom, right? And I look right into the camera, and it sounds simple like, hey, Ike, Marcus Shan here. Just want to send you a quick note and say thank you so much for connecting with me. It means a lot to me. If you can tell based off what I do, my big goal is to help people who are in B2B sales to sell more. So here's some free resources. Feel free to check it out. I hope you enjoy it. Either way, I'm super happy to connect with you. Boom. That's it.
Finito. That's
very simple, And let me break the structure down so people can kind of replicate, because that's obviously for what I do for my business. But it's very simple, and I break it into 3 parts. I call it a GDP strategy, right? GDP, right? Which,
write this down.
Gross domestic product, right? So it's very simple. Gratitude, a deposit, and personalized. That's it. Super simple. So I start with a little bit of gratitude, because I make sure people understand, hey, I'm taking time. I just want to say thank you. People are already thrown off by that. They're thrown off by the video. Now you're thanking them, right? And now I'm going to give them a deposit, something of value. So I give them something of high value, completely free, not a time on my calendar, but something completely free, a free resource, whatever it's going to be, right? But it's going to solve a problem for them, right? So I usually either offer them my free Facebook group, which I have tons of free trainings in there, or a free.
How can people find that?
What's that?
How can people find your Facebook group?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they can go on Facebook and look up Real B2B Sales Talk. That's Real B2B Sales Talk. It's my group in there. We have over 1,000 members. I have trainings, live sessions in there, posts, a lot of valuable stuff. So that's a massively valuable resource I offer as well. But I make sure I don't throw like 5 resources. I'm like, hey, here's this one resource for now. You don't want to overwhelm them, right? Your goal is
come on, bring it on.
Yeah, I gave them a deposit, and then it's hyper personalized. And my call to action is like, hey, Go check it out if you want. That's it. I'm not saying book a time. My language is very intentional, right? Now, what I also do as well is I'll put some text below, usually if it's my target market, and I'll kind of summarize what I said. This way, just in case they are in a spot where they can't hear because maybe they're at home, the kids are loud or whatever, and they can't listen to the video, they'll also see my text as well, which references the video. So this way they know it's directly to them.
So those 3 steps are?
Gratitude, deposit, and just personalize to them. That's
Got it.
Super simple. 25, 30 seconds long. You can see it's very quick. It's very authentic. It's very personal. And what happens is a lot of times people are like, wow, that's really amazing. I have a really high response rate. It doesn't always mean everyone turns into a closed deal. That's not the goal, right? The goal is to open the door for conversation. But you, Ike, are in the sub 1%ers where you responded with the video. Many people are very uncomfortable doing the video, right? So it's a really powerful way to open the door. It's really cool too, because usually the people that I get a video from are kind of like you. They're like, this is my first video. I'm like, all right, great.
Well, that's good. I appreciate you bringing people along into the world of marketing. I need to put a PS on this story about sending you back a video in which I said, and we can even communicate by text if you'd like. So immediately he sent me a voice message.
Yes, I did.
So, thank you very much. And I'm an auditory, so either way, I won. And if I have to read something, I get it, but I much prefer to listen. When Marcus Chan was a younger man, and I assume that wasn't that long ago.
Don't be fooled.
Well, I get it. I get it. I won't go into that. Would people say now that's just the way you were as a kid?
Oh, yeah. No, definitely not.
Tell us what led to the transformation into what seems like a person with a relatively high degree of emotional intelligence, where the ability to read into other people and have them read authentically into you has been developed. How did that come about?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, growing up, so English is actually my second language, and I actually didn't start talking until I was 4 years old. Really? And I actually grew up with a speech impediment. So for years, I had speech therapy. So that really led to me being very insecure, not able to communicate very well verbally, with body language or really anything, right? And, my confidence was really quite, shot growing up. Add in the fact that I grew up in a predominantly white town. So, of course, there's racism, there's whatever, right? So you kind of grew up kind of like trying to blend in. That's kind of how I kind of grew up, right? Don't make waves, kind of just go with the flow. And that's kind of how I grew up, more like a wallflower, if you will. Now, as I started getting older, and I'm an ambivert, right? So I'm right in between extrovert and introvert, right in the middle. I tested for us, right? So, what's interesting is as I got a little bit older, and this is going to sound super entertaining and probably a little bit nerdy, and I don't think I ever talked about this before, at least on a podcast. In about middle school, I started really getting into street magic, like magic tricks. Okay, like David Blaine at the time was really, really popular. So I wasn't like pulling rabbits out of hats, but what I loved was the concept of being in a place with friends, family, strangers, and suddenly I could perform like feats that no one could ever think was possible out of ordinary objects. So like street magic, I'm like, that was really neat. So when I first started, that was really outside my comfort zone, right? Really, to like gather crowds of small people to try to do magic and basically put on a show, very uncomfortable for me. So it took a lot of practice. So early on, I'll literally go to the library and I'll get as many books on magic. I went to a local magic shop, and with ordinary objects, special gimmick devices, and I would practice legerdemain over and over. That's right. Sleight of hand, over and over. The same moves over and over and over in front of the mirror. In fact, I actually went and took my dad's JVC camcorder, big old clunky thing, and I would record myself, and I would practice and watch and tweak. And this is I was 10, 11 years old, over and over and over to improve. Because what would happen is when you are performing and when you are doing tricks and whatever, there's usually a sequence of things you have to do because you're always steps ahead. But more importantly, there's also usually a storyline, pattern, things you would say to really accentuate the impact of the result that you're going for. So I would practice over and over and over. And I started just like at school, like this quiet little kid started just doing magic at school, like with some friends. And then what would happen, like, whoa, how'd you do that? And then crowds, more kids would come and the more kids. And it became, I'll really, gather crowds of 20, 30 kids on lunch breaks and recesses or not recesses, like breaks. And they would be in the hallways watching me perform. Right. And of course, what that meant was over time. So over time, when we first started doing it, like, your friends kind of think it's cool. As I started doing it more and more and more, I started garnering larger audiences and more people where it became a thing where people would want me to perform on demand. They'd be like, oh, hey, do that thing where you bite the quarter. Do that thing where you stick that pen to the dollar. Do that thing.
How much magic do you still do?
None. I don't do
I'm crushed.
anymore.
I'm
right?
crushed.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so, oh yeah. That's my son. He's hanging out. He thinks it's a sweeping.
It's all right. So, it's all right. Yeah. I just got to take a Zoom call from my son and daughter-in-law who live in New Hampshire with my 6-month-old grandchild that I haven't seen yet.
Awesome. So, I love that.
And my 14-year-old grandchild's leaving for the Hogwarts of music this coming Saturday. So, Idlewild. So it's very exciting. The transition of actually going into sales took place at approximately what age?
Yeah, so to actually going into an outside hunting B2B sales role, I was 21 years old. Mm-hmm. So really throughout the whole time, though, I had to learn how to basically turn it on, right, if you will. Sure. Turn on demand, right? And working for my parents at a very, very young age, we worked in all types of environments, so I was always turning it on regardless. And I was always in customer service, in service type roles. So then what ended up happening was, when I graduated, that was my first outside B2B sales role. And that was very different because when you're in customer service, people are coming in, you're dealing with those type of situations. It is what it is. But when you're doing outbound, you're doing cold calls, and you're not. We also did canvassing door to door as well. When you're going door to door, right? Your ability to not just turn it on, but keep it on, despite getting your face smashed in over and over and over, takes a lot of resilience. I remember I remember situations where I had dogs bite me. I had people pull guns on me. I've had all types of weird situations, especially in the door-to-door world. So it takes quite a bit of resilience to be able to push through regardless of whatever happens. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Oh, it still hurts. But you also know it's part of the journey to sales success. You must push through it, and it's going to keep coming. It doesn't get any easier. You only get better the more you do it.
Well, with that in mind, if the surgeon on this end can do an opening up and have you tell us if there was one thing you look back on as having been really effective at in your 20s and after, that you look back at now and go, I don't believe I sold that way. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
You mean in terms of things that maybe I did?
Yes, like I used to use the Ben Franklin close all of the time until somebody actually responded to me and go, yeah, I'll be happy to do this with you. And I want to let you know that's the best presentation of the Ben Franklin I've ever seen. And I knew at that moment there had to be a different way.
Yeah, what's interesting is, I think it's a great point, right? So, one of the things early on that I've always had the belief about, especially early on, was I believe I always had to put on a level of professional and an image with the prospect that was always to the nines. And what I mean by that, and part of it was I got a little brainwashed a little bit, right? Because early on, all we could wear were suits. We wore suits everywhere we went, right? That was part of the roles that we did, full suits. And in Portland, Oregon, that's a little bit unique. It's a little bit different, right? It kind of stands out. It's a pretty casual, city. Now, that's what we wore. Now, on top of that, because I always thought you had the perception of that as well. Like, when I started making some money, I started buying watches, and I love watches. I still love watches and timepieces. And I remember one of the watches I bought at that point, like even before, most of my watches were pretty inexpensive, $10, $20, nothing really crazy. They were gifts from other people. And I remember I bought a watch for $400, which is a lot of money for me back then. And I'm like, it was a pretty nice Bulova watch, and it was massive, but it wasn't just big. I like big watches. I still like big watches, but it was not only was it massive, it was like super shiny. Like, I mean, it was like, it was just shiny as heck, right? And in my mind, I'm like, okay, part of when I'm meeting with prospects, I want to showcase success, if you will, that I'm successful and I have a nice suit, I have a nice car, I have a nice watch. And for some prospects, yes, that's important to them. But what was really interesting is I remember, I didn't close this business. I remember I was meeting with a mechanic auto shop, and I was meeting with them, and just in the meeting, he kept looking at my wrist, and I'm not surprised. I mean, it was like very flashy, just a very flashy looking.
It's like
watch.
A sidecar.
Yeah, but it was because it's big. I mean, being a big watch is one thing, because it was shiny. The whole thing was shiny. Like, it was like shiny. It felt like it was
can see it.
Yeah.
I'm a child of the 70s.
Yeah. It was like probably blinding him with the shine, right? And he kept looking at her. He kept looking at it, right? And at one point, like in the meeting, like we're kind of wrapping up. I can tell I'm not going to close it. He makes a comment to me. He was like, "Yeah, you must close a lot of business. That's a pretty nice watch there." I mean, I just turn on like bright red, right? Bright red, because this is a mechanic, like a typical mechanic shop, right? And so he's kind of like looking at me like, then this guy's fitting. He comes in wearing a suit. He's got this fancy watch on. When I turn on, I have high energy. My energy is incredibly high. Right. And I didn't know how to dial it then, especially for a prospect. I didn't know how to dial for a prospect.
You.
So that was like, I got down, I'm like, wow. He was teaching me a lesson there I didn't realize.
Excellent.
I think close the business. Yeah. The lesson was simply this, like, I wasn't able to connect with him, and it was more than just my personality, but he was probably intimidated by what I was wearing, by the watch I was wearing. And after that point, I literally stopped wearing that watch. I stopped wearing. I would only wear it if it was like, a weekend out somewhere fun, or like a wedding or something, something like that, like a special occasion. I stopped wearing that watch.
It's like taking out the boat. Yeah,
that's what it was. It's like because I didn't choose the right audience, because that watch maybe would have been great with maybe a different type of audience, right? But it was just too flashy. And
I tell my clients all of the time to make sure that they meet their prospects at their model of the universe. Find out on which channel they receive and process information most effectively, and then deliver it to them to have them try to respond and meet you at your model. It's really tough for them. And here's this probably very proud, I'm going to assume successful mechanic going,
yep.
What is he here for? I mean, this is all flashy, but I don't feel comfortable. And, in today's way of communicating with inside of what we call selling, that's a danger zone. That's a minefield. So I'm delighted that you bypassed it. So I have a question that follows right up with your amazing rise to effectiveness in what's an otherwise, let's face it, if sales were easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And is sales and confidence in your ability to sell something that is innate and can be built upon, or is it purely acquired and then developed? What have you seen in working with your clients and your students that gives you some idea of whether or not some of our friends listening right now have any hope at all?
Yeah, great question, right? And what's interesting is we're talking about competence and confidence, right? Those two things are absolutely critical. And fortunately, both can be developed, right? Both can be developed, right? And I think about, competence over time for sure, right? But you also need both, right? And when I think confidence is probably one of the number one challenges many people struggle with. Their confidence in themselves to, talk about their solution, to ask questions, to connect with their prospect, to be able to maintain even when there's a tough day. So the way I picture confidence is it's very much like a bank account, right? It's a bank account in your brain. And everything you do either adds to your confidence bank account as a deposit or withdraws. Every single thing you do, especially it's when it's for the things you are supposed to do. Right. So if you don't do it, it withdraws. So here's a really good example. If 99% of the time when you go for a close, there will be at least one objection. Okay. If they give you an objection and you do not work to overcome it or to clarify, to dig deeper, you will withdraw from your confidence bank account. But if you focus on uncovering, digging, handling an objection, and you do it every single time, you will build confidence knowing every time you get an objection, you will be able to handle it, right? And that's really, really important. That builds your confidence in just that one part of the sales process. And it applies to everything, whether it's if you know.
And I tell everybody who sells the traditional way where you do a presentation and you field objections that, you have to start looking at not the numbers game of, well, if I call 100, I'll make a sale.
Right.
Where in that bell curve of life do your prospects lie that approach to selling will make the biggest impact on your marketplace, so you don't spend time with people that at your gut level are going nowhere. And we're very rarely surprised. And to be candid with you, the sales system that I created in the late 80s and 90s was all because I hated that stuff so much. I hated overcoming objections. I hated presentations. I didn't like the feeling of closing, so I created a system where none of those are present, because the prospect does all of that for you based 100%. On communication. And I just want to put one thing in and then get your take on it, because I look at selling and we as salespeople as problem solvers rather than salespeople. But most salespeople know they solve a problem, but rarely know what problem they solve.
That's right.
And so if indeed you become aware of the problem that you solve and you let people know that, it's amazing how quickly they'll say, "Oh, I have that problem." But in a lot of cases, professionals know what they do, but are clueless when it comes to knowing the problem they solve. And I have a new feature, and that's ask my conversation mate here to identify the problem that you solve.
Yes. Yeah. What's interesting is, are you asking me what problem I solve?
Yes, I'm curious because I have a vision, but I'm curious, as you're communicating so effectively, how do people know if they're going, I have this problem? Marcus will solve that. And over the years, what problem has come up most consistently that you can say, generally, this is the problem my clients have when they come to me?
Yeah, I'll say one of the probably number one issues, whether they realize it or not, until they start working with me or until I enlighten them, is their ability to ask the right questions internally and externally. Right.
Oh, excellent.
And that's such a key thing where you respond, right? I have a feeling, with the system that you teach, you probably teach asking a lot of right questions up front, because you may uncover in asking the right questions, your solution may not even be a good fit. You may disqualify a customer as a result because it will not make sense. And
because of that numbers game,
and that's just being smart about your business, right? And I find most sales professionals, I believe a lot of times it's because the companies, when they hire someone new, what they do first is train them on product knowledge, and they almost like inundate and brainwash them on product knowledge. So that's all they are really comfortable with. So when they go out there, they want to spew things. On the phones, they want to spew product knowledge. Face-to-face, they want to spew product knowledge. On the Zoom call, they want to spew product knowledge. They want to get right to the demo or whatever. But the reality is it may not even be a good fit. You haven't even asked the right questions. You haven't covered the problem, the root, the need, the desires, what they want to end up doing with the business. You have no idea of their end destination, how you can help them get there. But you can only do that if you ask the right questions up front. So a lot of times I find the number one issue is they ask poor questions or very surface level questions to the onion that they got to peel as much as possible to get to the root. And only then, once it gets to the root, can they show their solution if it's a good fit.
So your clients who come to you are frustrated and stressed out because when they need to ask the right question, they have a hard time. And your service helps them be more effective at asking those questions.
Yeah. So usually
that's your elevator pitch.
100%. So literally mine's so simple, right? I help business sales reps sell more and earn more without needing years of experience. And if they're not selling to the level they want or earning to the level they want, they know there's a gap in there.
Excellent. And that's the problem. A difference exactly between right. what you have and what you want.
100%. Like where are they today? Where do they want to go? Yeah. Solve it. That's the solve right there.
Yeah. And can you get there by yourself? One of the things, and I really haven't talked to a lot of people who think this way, but I tell all my clients, think like a doctor.
Yes.
When you go in and you talk to them, there's a reason they've come for the checkup. You don't know what it is. What are you going to prescribe before you diagnose? Why don't you just go and ask, so when you came here today, what were you hoping to accomplish? And right. if salespeople would just ask that and be quiet,
right.
they would find out in a little while. But it's the confidence to move away from, let me tell you what I can do for you. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with people who are stuck on the Alec Baldwin form of selling?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I love the doctor analogy, right? I think the first piece is, of course, helping them understand what's wrong with their whatever they're currently doing is leading to their existing results. It's that simple. Like whatever you do consistently is going to lead to those same results. If you are not in the shape you want to be in, that probably means what you're doing consistently is leading to your physical shape, right? So people are results of their behaviors, their routines, of what they consistently do. So a lot of times it's helping them understand that. And I love the doctor analogy. I use the exact same one where when you think about even with a doctor, you get a brand new doctor. Even before you meet with a doctor, they have you fill an online form, or they send you paperwork, or you go and you fill out paperwork, which are just questions. Questions you answer first. Then you don't get to meet a doctor yet. You go meet with the nurse. The nurse asks you even more questions. And then you go meet the doctor, and he or she asks you more questions to re-elaborate to make sure they really understand. And then only then do they actually say, okay, based on what you told us, here is the solution, the prescription, what you need to do next to get to where you want to go.
And the term we use for that process of taking people from the general to the specific is known as funneling. And if you are good with your questions, and I believe if relationship has been formed, open-ended questions in many cases are less important than if no relationship is there, in which open-ended questions will help get the information. But in a relationship with a current client, you don't need to have to go in there and say, under what conditions might you be willing to do business with someone other than your current provider?
Right.
I mean, you're looking at saying, so, did you know that I did this and he doesn't?
Yeah, so that's where it's like that emotional intelligence, that also really what I call AQ, adaptability intelligence, right? Adapt to on the spot and say, no, you know what? I got to adjust a little bit to make sure I'm catering to this client or whomever to ask these type of questions, right? And
the ability to move between levels of logical thinking so that you have enough options that help you maintain your outcome.
100%, 100%. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Excellent. So if you were sent a rookie this afternoon and you said, here are the first 2 things that I want you to do because we're going out in the field tomorrow, what would those be?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So I would say the first 2 things I would say is, number 1, I would want them to write out their exact goals for tomorrow. That's the first thing I want to do.
Good.
Right. Crystal clear goals. What's the exact outcomes they want to accomplish for tomorrow, right? And then number two, I want them write out their exact strategy and action they want to get there.
Give us an idea of what an exact strategy looks like. And I'm not asking for details. We're asking for a strategic overview.
Yeah. Let's just say, for example, if they plan, I'll make some calls in the morning and in the afternoon, let's just say they want to do face-to-face work, going canvassing doors, whatever they're going to do, right? Whatever they decide, if they want all the phones, whatever, but for the purpose or today's purpose, we'll say that's it. Mm-hmm. I'll say, cool. Okay. So they say, cool. They're like, I'm going to make calls tomorrow. And in the field, we're going to go knock on doors. I would say, great. Let's dig a little bit deeper. What's your goal on the phone tomorrow? Well, I want to book appointments. I get that. How many appointments do you want to book? So now we're going to get really granular. Okay, cool. So how will you build your list? Who's going to be on the list? What are you going to say on the phones? What are the common objections? So now as we dig into the root, now we start working through a tactical strategy, right?
Plus you see their eyes and what your comments are causing them to go through in their mind.
Exactly right. And then go same thing in the afternoon. Cool. So you want to go knock on some doors? Cool. Where exactly in your territory? What zip code? What businesses? What's your approach? What are you going to say? What's your goal of knocking on the doors? So we're getting clearly very, very tactical, very, very deep into it, right?
But those are the questions of a solid plan. You can bypass it if you choose to go to 100 doors and go, it doesn't work.
Right. Because reality is as you and I both know, the separation's in the preparation, right? So when you have that plan out there, it's okay if you don't accomplish the plan 100%, but at least you have direction. So at least you're knowing you're heading towards the right direction, and then you can tweak and adjust it, right? Because reality is if I'm with them in the field, it will lead to coaching and adjusting and tweaking on the spot, rewriting of frameworks of what you say, handling objections, whatever it's going to be to get to the end goal, right? But again, I find majority of salespeople really struggle even the planning aspect, whether they're a rookie or not. They are not looking far ahead into the next week, right? And that's very scary. It's very scary.
Interesting, and I've been teaching this for years and years. It's called the structure of results, and it's 5 steps. It's what do you want? Again, most people don't know what they want. They know what they don't want. I don't want to go to 100 doors and have no one buy from me. Well, what do you want? Well, I'd like to close 13 out of the 100. Excellent. So what do you want? Stated in the positive. What'll happen if you get it?
Yep. Exactly,
and really relate that in such a way that you can touch it, feel it, taste it. How will you know when you've got it?
Mm-hmm.
And then what will happen if you don't get it?
Yes.
And then what's stopping you from having it already or making you think that you can't get it?
That's right.
And those end up being pretty powerful questions that are really in tune with what you were talking about. So that's great. And if I may be so bold, one of these things about a problem statement, about being able to tell prospects, even if it's door knocking and going, I work with people who are going crazy because of bugs. When was the last time you had the house done? And versus, well, I work for one of the oldest bug companies, Slam.
Right.
And if people are clear on the problem they solve, it's just a communications, not even a gimmick. It's a key that
100%.
Opens up somebody to go, I have that. Can you help? And most sales communication is not geared towards somebody saying to you, oh, yeah, I'm dealing with that. Can you help?
What's interesting is I find a lot of times sales professionals are so focused on they want something, a flashy line, something super gimmicky to get a special magical result. At the end of the day, prospects just want to understand, why are you reaching out? Get to the point. Communicate as fast as possible why you're reaching out and how can you help them. That's really, that simplifies everything, every part of the sales process. But a lot of times they try to cloud fancy things and, trying to fool prospect. No one's going to get fooled. It's 2020. Okay. No one's getting fooled here. All right.
Do they have the problem you solve?
Right. Right. That's you got to simplify your messaging. And what's interesting is, especially in our field, right, in sales training, coaching, et cetera, I see some trainers out there who try to get all flashy with gimmicky things with marketing. I'm like, that's cool for sure. I mean, but at the end of the day, does it get the result the client wants? That's all that matters, right? Do they deliver results? That's all that matters.
Well, the whole idea, I'm on a couple sales groups on another social site. And one of the questions there yesterday was, my gosh, how do you handle objections? They're driving me nuts. And I wrote them back. I said, you really could get away without ever having objections again. And, they came back, you're full of, and it wasn't happiness. And, people who aren't aware that, and when I talk about this system, I'm not talking about a door knocking system. I'm not talking about necessarily a cold calling system, which there's an application. I'm talking about, as you said, B2B or a B2C or a B2C suite where you are having a conversation where an appointment has been set. It's how do you, if not guarantee that you'll be able to get the close, you'll guarantee you will walk away being something other than frustrated and stressed out.
Right.
And, that's what I tell people when they've sold the traditional way long enough and they're looking for a kinder and gentler way, this seems to fill the bill. However, most people sell the way that you are assisting people to be more effective at. And that's really where it's at right now. My little pin in the balloon will live with me and live beyond me, but you're dealing with the meat and potatoes of day-to-day sales, and I want to acknowledge you. If people want to get a hold of you, Marcus, what would be the best way that they could do that?
Yeah, absolutely right. So you head over to marcuschan.io/resources. That's marcuschan.io/resources. In there, I got plenty of free trainings, links to my social media sites, but everything in there, my free groups in there as well. So everything you need to contact me or to get some awesome free training from me is all right there as well.
That's marvelous. And is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I'll say first off, thanks so much for listening, and thank you for being what I believe the absolute best profession in the world. Because obviously, when you excel into it, man, it can really change your life. I know it's changed mine. I know it's changed yours, changed many other people. So I commend you and respect the heck out of you for being in sales and also listen to this podcast to make yourself better. So thank you so much for listening.
Yes, and thank you for being here on behalf of all of our listeners and viewers now on the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast. I want to say thank you, Marcus Chan.
Thanks so much.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. And quick, what problem do you solve? I'm going to be bugging you about that every episode from now on. I can't tell you how big of a difference it'll make. And please make sure that you check out Marcus's material. I am here to help you in your communication, but getting to that communication and securing that communication, Marcus is the guy to listen to on that. Plus, I'll be bringing you some more guests that'll help you close the deal as I help you close the deal without selling. This is Ike Krieger. See you next time.